Welcome, everyone. Welcome. As you are filtering in, please, if you can see and hear me, drop your name and location into the chat. Where are you joining us from? I see Jess in Edinburgh. Paige in London, welcome. All right, we have more coming in now. It looks like you all can see and hear me, so that means everything is working out just fine. Welcome, I am Michelle from ProWritingAid, and we're so happy to have you here. I am joined by Leigh Russell and Dea Parkin. And before we get started, I just have one little announcement for you. Wanted to let you know that ProWritingAid is hosting our annual Fantasy Writers Week next week, starting on Monday, April 22nd. It goes until the 26th. And we have a totally packed schedule with writers' workshops and networking events. So if you are interested in fantasy writing as well, we'd love to have you. And I'm going to drop the link into the chat now if you would like to register. And I know that this is a crime writing event, so I do want to tease to you to keep in touch with our socials and our email newsletter for more Writers Week announcements coming up throughout this year, which I think you will be excited about. So I can't give away too much yet, but just keep an eye on everything. But in the meantime, we'd love to see you at Fantasy Writers Week next week. So with that being said, today we're joined by Leigh Russell and Dea Parkin from the Crime Writers Association. Leigh Russell has had over 30 novels traditionally published. Best known for her million-selling Geraldine Steele crime series, she writes a popular cozy crime series inspired by her daughter's rescue puppy. Leigh has an MA in English Literature from the University of Kent. Before she began writing full-time, she taught secondary school English. She runs creative writing courses for adults in Greece, France, and Italy, as well as the UK, where she is taught in prisons and universities. Leigh likes to support aspiring writers and is chair of judges for the Crime Writers Association's prestigious Debut Dagger Award and an advisory fellow for the Royal Literary Fund. In addition to these supportive roles, Leigh is a sought-after freelance editor. Leigh lives in London near her daughters and granddaughter. Dea Parkin is competitions coordinator of the CWA, was formerly general coordinator, and has been an associate member since 2012. She owns editorial consultancy Fiction Feedback and spends much of her time editing novels. Dea facilitates the CWA's Debut Dagger competition, as well as the Marjorie Allingham Short Mystery Prize and the Dagger in the Library. She is herself a fiction writer and playwright and has published a book of accessible poetry called Any Other Business. Her short story, The Sound and the Fury, appears in the most recent CWA anthology, Music of the Night. Welcome, Leigh and Dea. We're so excited to have you here for this exciting announcement. Before we get started, just if you have any questions specific for them, please drop them in the Q&A. As you can see, the chat can move quickly and we don't want anything to get lost. So if you do have a question, pop it in there. And if you want to chat during the event, just make sure in the drop-down menu in the next to two, you select everyone. Otherwise, your messages will just come to us. So I think that is everything. Dea and Leigh, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle. And thank you to ProWritingAid, the editing tool for writers, for sponsoring the Crime Writers Association Debut Dagger Award. We wanted to start by talking a little bit about the Crime Writers Association. So I've been a member of the CWA for about 15 years, and there are all sorts of benefits to membership. For a pretty modest fee of £79 a year, you will receive a monthly magazine, Red Herrings, which is, and this is open to self and traditionally published authors. And you can find details of how to join the CWA on the website, which is just www.thecwa.co.uk. Benefits of being a member include meeting other authors and I think anyone who's involved in the crime writing world will agree that it is a very supportive and encouraging community. And as well as going to festivals and meeting other writers, other authors, being a member entitles you to go along to the CWA conferences, which are packed full of interesting events and speakers. There are regional chapters which hold their own events, both in person and online, and we have a Christmas party. Other benefits include promotion of your own work, and you can become involved in National Crime Reading Month, which takes place in June, when there are a host of events taking place, and these are all promoted by the CWA. The CWA provides social media promotion on publication day for your books, and you can place your author profile online on the CWA website. So the CWA does a lot to support authors. We also have the Crime Readers Association, which has about 12,000 members, and the CRA sends out a monthly newsletter with news about members, information about their books. But in addition to all of these benefits for members, and there are more, I could go on about this, the CWA also works very hard to support emerging authors. And Dee is going to say a little bit more about this in a moment. I run a critiquing service for the CWA where we critique work by published and aspiring authors. And there's an editing service which is run by Dee. So I'm going to hand over now to Dea Parkin, who is the backbone of the CWA and is going to tell you more about what the CWA does to support emerging authors.
Oh, thank you, Leigh. Yes, emerging authors is a membership category that we started about 3 years ago, I think. And we were asked to do something for authors who were up and coming, who were serious about writing, but hadn't yet got a publishing contract or self-published their own book, but were well on the way. And it's a category that we're aiming to develop. In the next year or so, we hope to be able to announce 1 or 2 new things that we'll be doing to support those writers. But at the moment, it's open to anyone who gets longlisted in the Debut Dagger. So that's going to be anyone on the list that Leigh's going to announce later on. And it's also open to anyone who's been on particular crime writing courses, courses with some sort of accreditation. We're looking not just at the MA courses that some of the UK universities provide, but other courses too, but where we know them and perhaps where a tutor can recommend them. But we are talking about series courses, not about maybe an online course that only lasts for a week or something like that. So that's something to be aware of. Having said that, we are changing the criteria all the time for acceptance as emerging author. So what do you get as an emerging author? Essentially, you get just as much as you do for a CWA member. So you get, obviously the promotions doesn't count for quite so much, though we might be looking at something that people can do online to sort of raise their profile with agents and publishers. But as I say, that's all got to be finalised yet. But they can do just about everything else that CWA members can do apart from vote at the AGM. So you can go to the Christmas party that Leigh mentioned. You can come to the conference. You can certainly join in with the chapters, and the chapters are regional in the UK, but we also have a US chapter and chapters elsewhere in the world as well, including Australia and New Zealand. So emerging authors can do all that, and yet it's for half the price. Now, the only drawback, I suppose, is that it's only for 3 years. So if you're not able to commute your membership to a full member in 3 years, that is by having a book published one way or another, then unfortunately the membership comes to a close. But we hope that for most people that's not the case, and they do go on to get published within that time limit. certainly the people who enter the Debut Dagger and get longlisted and certainly shortlisted very often do go on to get published. But Leigh and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear that anyone who is interested in emerging authors, if they go onto the website and look under supporting crime writers, there's emerging authors on the drop down there. So you'll be able to click on that and see a little bit more detail. But also, if you're interested then in actually applying or in finding out more, then the email to use would be membership@thecwa.co.uk. And that goes through to our membership coordinator, who I know is watching tonight. So she'll be there going, yes, please do that. So anyone interested, that'll be fabulous. Thank you. Okay, we said that we would mention past successes. So Leigh, do you want to kick us off with one?
Well, I think if you've probably got more details written down than I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to put a big shout out really to our Debut Dagger winner in 2017, who is Sherry Rankin. And she's based in the States, and she won in 2017 with her the opening of her novel Strange Fire. Now, she got an agent as a result, which was great, but she didn't quite manage to get a publishing deal, which was sad. But she had a lot of encouragement from the agent that she got, and she finished a novel called The Hare's Mask in 2023. And within weeks, her agent got her a 2-book deal with Thomas and Mercer. So that's pretty good going. And The Hare's Mask will, we understand, be published next year in 2025. So congratulations to Sherry. I was really keen to say that about Sherry, because I think we all felt a bit sorry, you know, that she, although she got an agent, she didn't get published straight away, but she stuck at it. And I think that's a lesson for us all as well, about persistence. I mean, we see time after time the same people entering the Debut Dagger, and obviously most people are not successful. But that's perhaps harsh, saying they're not successful, because I personally think that anyone who manages to get their act together and can follow the rules of the competition and can write an opening and a synopsis, which is particularly tricky, and get that into us, that's already an achievement, and it gives you confidence. So even if you don't make the long list that we'll be announcing later, then I think it's still worth entering the Debut Dagger and every other competition that you can find to enter, because it is so good for your confidence. And every time you enter, you're honing your craft. You're learning more about writing. You're learning more about putting yourself across professionally. Now, on the CWA website, there's actually quite a few tips and hints about what would make a good submission. And you might want to have a look at that under crime writing tips, because the information, I'm sure, could be used not only for the Debut Dagger, which obviously doesn't open now again until October, but also for any other competitions and for your submissions in general. There's quite a bit of information there about the sort of things you might be thinking about. So I hope that's helpful to have a little look at that under crime writing tips.
And we have had people in the past who have entered the Debut Dagger competition more than once and have actually ended up on the shortlist, perhaps on their 3rd attempt, and then found a publisher.
Yeah, good point, Leigh. Thank you. That has happened. So someone else I'd like to mention is Fiona McPhillips. She was shortlisted in 2021, and she actually got a publishing deal fairly soon after that, I think. And it's going to be published in May 2024, so next month. And that's her book, When We Were Silent. The novel was called Underwater when she was shortlisted, but it's now When We Were Silent, and that's out with a most delicious cover next month, and that's published by Bantam. And I perhaps ought to say here that one of the biggest rewards, if you like, if you are shortlisted for the Debut Dagger, is that those entries get sent out to agents and publishers, crime specialists, so that you have a really, really good chance of getting picked up, not just because your name is on the list. And I have to say as well that quite often I get publishers coming to me and saying, okay, we've seen the shortlist. What about the long list? So even if you don't make the shortlist but are on the long list, then very often your book might be called up then. So it's all a good way of getting attention. And it's also a very good thing to put on your CV, your writing CV. You know, when you send in your query letter, making submissions, if you can say that I was longlisted or shortlisted for the Debut Dagger, then it does make agents and publishers sit up and take note.
Yes,
Leigh, did you want to
definitely
add to that?
Yes, I mean, I think perhaps we should mention M.W. Craven.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Mike Craven, bless him. He was shortlisted for the Debut Dagger in 2013. And I have to say, he's one of the competition's strongest advocates. First, because he really thinks that that was instrumental in him getting first an agent, and then eventually he got published with the Avison Fluke series, which I think has been reissued with very nice covers. But it was his second series featuring Washington Poe and Tilly Bradshaw that really hit the big time, because The Puppet Show, the first in that series, it won the CWA Gold Dagger, which is effectively for the best crime novel of the year in 2019. And then Dead Ground won the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger in 22. And The Botanist, another title in the same series, was shortlisted for the Ian Fleming Steel in 2023. And he goes from strength to strength. And as he always says, it's down to getting shortlisted in the Debut Dagger, which is very kind of him. But you know, maybe that did play a part in his success.
I'm sure it did, because that is what first drew attention to his work. And part of the difficulty, really, I'm speaking now with my writer's hat on, part of the difficulty, I think, for new writers is to break in. And the buzzword is discoverability. You might write a brilliant book and you get it, you know, you're pitching it, but who is going to see it? Who's going to pick it up out of the slush pile? But if you are longlisted or shortlisted for the Debut Dagger, then you're not in the slush pile. You are submitting a manuscript that agents and publishers are going to look at. So it's really worth persevering. It's really worth entering the competition, because it does give you that all-important initial leg up in the very competitive field of crime writing. So yes, and you can see on the CWA website, if you have a look, there are a number of really fantastic success stories like M.W. Craven from writers who were shortlisted or longlisted or who won the Debut Dagger competition. So we're really very proud of what the competition has contributed and has achieved, really, in terms of supporting new writers. So shall we move on to talking about what we look for as judges, Dee, do you think? Because this is enormously difficult, because we do receive hundreds and hundreds of really brilliant submissions. So we do our best to try and make the judging process as objective as we can and as fair a process as we can. Obviously, there's always going to be an element of subjectivity, but unlike some competitions, we don't just have one judge. We have a team of readers, and every submission, every entry is read by at least 2 readers who will judge it by set criteria, and they do the judging independently. Everything is anonymous, so they don't know who the writers are. And if there's not a consensus between the 2 readers, then it will be shown to a 3rd reader. And sometimes Dee will send me a submission and say, we can't quite reach a consensus about this one. You know, perhaps some readers love it, some don't like it. What should we do? So we do take this very seriously, and we do read them very carefully. So once the team of readers have scored all the submissions and paid close attention to every single entry, a long list is then worked out, And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. We then have a panel of judges. So myself and Dee, plus two, I think this year we have 2 leading literary agents and a commissioning editor from a leading publishing house, and that's fairly typical. So we have a panel of judges, and again, the long-listed submissions are sent to us individually, anonymized, and we all judge them, we all score them ourselves, and Dee then has the horrendous job of trying to put all these scores together and coming up with a shortlist out of the long list. So what are we looking for? Well, I mean, there's a number of things we look for. And this is not just, we don't just read it and think, yeah, I like this or I don't like this. We're looking for specific things. One is the quality of the prose. So, and I think this is, this holds good for any competition that you're submitting to, any agent you're pitching to, any publisher you're pitching to. Make sure that your writing is as good as you can possibly make it, and then some, and then put it away, come back to it, look at it again. E.M. Forster said that all writing is rewriting. When I'm writing my novels, I'm constantly rewriting. I don't just dash something off and that's it. And I think, certainly for me, there are 2 processes involved in writing fiction. And one is the creative output, where you have this idea and you're so excited about it and it all comes pouring out. But then there's also, when you've gone through that process, there's the craft, where you go through what you've written and you try to look at it with a reader's eye. What is my reader taking away from this? So you're not just writing for yourself, but you're writing for an audience of readers. So the quality of prose is really important. And you know yourselves that when you pick up a book and you're thinking, shall I read it or not? Some writing just draws you in. Read the first page of The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene, and you are transported into a different world. So the quality of the prose and where it takes the reader is really important. We're then looking at characterization. We want to see a character who is relatable or memorable. The narrative voice. Is there a strong narrative voice? So when we're reading a book, when we're reading a submission, do we feel that this is actually talking to us? Setting is important. Is there a convincing setting? And the plot, obviously, and with the submission for the Debut Dagger, there's a synopsis included, so we can get some idea of the plot. Is it original? Does it actually work? And there's a balancing act between being original but also being plausible. So
can I just jump in there, Leigh? Sorry,
oh,
can I just jump in? Just on the question of synopses. It's something where I think people have a great deal of difficulty understanding what a synopsis is. It's not a blurb, and it's not meant to be written in a style like your novel. It is meant to give us the plot, what happens from the beginning to the end. And I've seen quite a few entries this year which might have been contenders for the long list and which sadly didn't make it because their synopsis didn't give us that detail. They sort of stopped after about a third and said effectively, and then a few things happen and the murderer is uncovered. And you know, that is not a synopsis, and it's not what we're looking for. No, I can't tell what your plot is going to be.
Yeah. A synopsis should not keep anything back. It should not leave the reader guessing. A synopsis, as Dee said, is not a blurb. A synopsis is not there to sell your story and tell us how brilliant it is. A synopsis just goes through step by step, saying what happens, and then we can make up our own minds whether we think this actually works. So yes, there is information on the CWA website about how to write a synopsis. It's quite a skill in itself. Very difficult to distill your whole novel into however many words. I think you get, is it 1,500 words we give? Which
That's
is
right.
quite generous for a synopsis. It used to be about 500 words. But I think in general, when you're submitting to anybody, my advice would be to focus on your main plot and just give the details of your main plot. Obviously, if your synopsis is 1,500 words and your novel is going to be, I don't know, 80, 90, 100,000 words, we know there's going to be more to it than just this one main plot that is outlined in your synopsis. But don't try to put too much in. Focus on your main characters, your main plot. So we have these very specific criteria. The only one that really allows for us to be completely subjective really is that one of our final criterion by which we judge is it a good read? Did I enjoy it? Would I want to read on? And that has to be a little bit subjective. But we try to be as objective as possible. We try to be as fair as possible. So we do devote a lot of time and attention to the judging because we're aware of the responsibility attached to it. Because being longlisted, shortlisted, winning the Debut Dagger does make a difference to writers' lives. It can really put you on the map. And I know from my own experience, I never entered the Debut Dagger. I didn't even know it existed, but my first novel was shortlisted for the John Creasy New Blood Dagger. And that really put my series on the map. And I found that when I went to literary festivals, wherever I went, agents came up and said hello to me. They knew who I was. I didn't know who they were. They knew who I was because I'd been, I mean, I came into all this knowing absolutely nothing. But being shortlisted for a Dagger Award just puts you on the map. So we're very aware when we're judging that this is not really just for fun. It's not just a little competition and, oh, wouldn't it be nice to win? This is a serious competition that can really kickstart somebody's career as a fiction writer.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dee, about
I would simply say that I read an awful lot of the entries for the Debut Dagger. As Leigh says, I'm not one of the readers, but I tend to do a lot of the evaluation where we've had some discrepancy and one of the marks is very high and the other mark maybe not so high. And if there's a big discrepancy in something like that, then we'll give it a third read. And I do a lot of those. And also, obviously, anything that looks like it's in contention for the long list, I will go through and read myself. And I have to say that the ones that probably do make it onto the long list are the ones that really have an element of excitement about them, that there's something that grips you when you read and you feel like you really want to carry on reading, that the characters are gripping, that the way they're described, what's happening to them, the setting and so on, all of that has to be good. But the ones that go on to be longlisted usually have something extra. The other extra thing that they have, apart from polished prose, which is a really big thing, but apart from that, I would say if you have a high concept that's followed through. So by that, what I mean is it's something that you can definitely hang your novel on. So it's not just a police procedural where you have a policeman who solves some murders. We want something more than that, something more gripping and something more, dare I say it, original. Now, I know there's nothing in the world that's original, but if you make us feel that it is, that's rather the point. So anything like that has that sort of excitement that really makes me think, oh my goodness, this is a very good one. That's got to be good. Obviously, it's not just my opinion that counts, very far from it. But I'm just passing on to you the sort of thing that affects me. But when it comes down to it, it is the scores that are all added up against those criteria that Leigh has just gone through that leads us to the long list. And then it's the judges themselves, and I'm a facilitator, not a judge, who actually make the decision from the shortlist and then the eventual winner. And I ought to perhaps mention at this point that the shortlist will be announced at Crime Fest on Friday. I think it's the 10th of May, and it's usually about 6 or 6:30 in the general Daggers reception. And then the winner will be announced at the Daggers dinner in London on the 4th of July. I don't think tickets are available quite yet, but it will be quite soon. And they're available to anyone. So it is just a case of keeping an eye on the website and on the socials and finding out when that's on, and maybe going along and getting a feel for what it's all like. It's very exciting evening.
It is very exciting, yes. I mean, there can be a number of hooks, and we all know, don't we, because we're all fiction readers, that books can stay with us for a number of reasons. So the excitement could come from the plot, and where is this going? It could come from a character. Sometimes you read a book, or we read a submission, and there's a character that kind of stays with you. So there's all sorts of different hooks, really, that can draw us in. But the main thing is, as a judge, when we're judging, we're readers, and we want to be drawn in to the world of the book, because books are actually fiction, are created not by the writer, but in the imagination of the reader. And as writers, our job is to give readers enough clues, enough information, so that readers can create a world in their own imaginations. So if you achieve that in your submission, in your entry, then you're in with a good chance of doing well. But I would reiterate what Dee said earlier, that if you've entered this year and you didn't make it to the long list, that's not to say that you won't make it to the long list next year, and maybe even win next year. And again, there are stories on the website you can read of people who have entered the Debut Dagger competition maybe 3 times in a row and got nowhere the first couple of times. And then the third time, I think somebody even won, didn't they, on their final, on their third attempt. So
yeah,
perseverance really is the key, I think, isn't it, to succeed in writing.
Yeah. Well, Leigh, I think it's getting close to that time.
Is it getting close to that time? Do you have a drum there? Can you give us a drum roll?
I'm sure I can't.
So yes, I mean, we want to thank to thank ProWritingAid once again, the editing tool for writers, for sponsoring the Crime Writers Association Debut Dagger Award. And so are we now ready to announce the long list? So I do apologize in advance if I mispronounce anybody's name. I probably will. And I say this every year, and I'm sure I get a few names wrong every time, but you will know who you are. We're announcing these in alphabetical order of the writer. So these are not in any order of ranking. So the long list is Burnt Ranch by Catherine Arlert, Unnatural Predators by Caroline Arnold, Villamar by Matt Coote, Good Criminals by Judy Hock, Vigilante Love Song by J.R. Holland, Bluebirds by Alan Jackson, Makoto Murders by Richard Jerram, The Lost Days of Forever by Jeremy Tinker, Not a Good Mother by Karabi Mitra, Long Way Home by Lynn McCall, A Politician's Guide to Murder by James Tobin, and The Blonde by Megan Toogood. So huge congratulations to those of you who've made it onto the long list. This is something that you can mention in your pitches in future, mention wherever you like, something to shout about and be very, very proud of. But to those of you who have not made it onto the long list this year, congratulations to you as well for having the talent and the guts and the stamina to enter the competition, and try again next year, and you never know. So congratulations to everybody on the long list, and we shall now be busy deciding who's going to go onto that coveted shortlist, and then ultimately deciding on an actual winner. So well done to everybody.
Yeah, Yes, well done, everyone. The list will be up on the CWA website at around 8 o'clock, I believe. So you can have a look then. And I'll be sending out emails to everyone as well. So don't think, oh my goodness, what did I miss my name? Was that really my name? We will be in touch. And just to let you know as well that all the longlisted writers will be asked to submit another 3,000 words from further on in their novel if they can, that will also be considered when we're looking at selecting the shortlist and winner.
Yes, we introduced this because we realised that in some novels, the narrative voice changes at different points throughout the novel. So just looking at the opening 3,000 words can give us a very good flavour of what the whole novel is, but sometimes we might miss something that's coming later on in the novel. So having a look at a second 3,000 words gives us a fairer view, really, of the whole novel. So, and it's always a good idea to have your novel finished particularly before you submit to an agent. Because if you've only written the opening of your novel and you send that off to an agent, there's a good chance they might say, "Oh, can I read the whole manuscript?" And then, "Oh, you'd have to finish it off in a rush, and it wouldn't be as good as it could be." So it's worth spending the time to finish a novel. So hopefully, you have all finished your, what you submitted. So if we ask you for the next 3,000 words, I think, is that just the shortlisted authors who are asked for the next 3,000 words? I can never remember.
Oh, we ask all the longlisted authors
okay.
to submit, the next 3,000
before
words.
We do the shortlist. Yeah, of course. Before we do yes.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you have all finished your novel, and
or at least managed to get a little bit further, so you can send us another 3,000 words.
If by any chance you haven't, then you need to find a place further on in your novel where you're able to write another 3,000 words now. But so we're going to look forward to reading those. And
I think Michelle's got. Yeah, Michelle, are you ready to leap in here?
Yes, thank you so much, and congratulations to everybody who was announced. We do have one question for you, Leigh and Dee, from an anonymous attendee. Is the Marjorie Allingham short mystery competition judged in the same way? Also, thank you very much for all of the information, so useful.
Oh, yes, this is the D, yeah.
Yeah, yes, it is. It is. It's judged in almost identical way. We have various pairs of readers, and they have set criteria as well, and they score against these criteria. And each entry is read by at least 2 people. And again, if there's a big discrepancy where one gives them a very high mark and another reader doesn't, then there will be a third read. After that, the process is a little bit different. Once the long list is then sent to the judges, and they decide on the shortlist and the winner. So actually, it's not very different. It's just the way it works out. It's done slightly differently. But every story is read by at least 2 readers who are qualified to do that. So good luck with that, and I'm glad you found the information useful, anonymous person. Thank you.
We have another question from Raphael, who says, how many submissions did you receive this year?
We never give the exact number away, but it is hundreds.
And we have a final question from JV, who says, will the special critiques be offered again for us? Thank you, ladies, for all of your amazing work.
Special critiques, yeah. Is that where you're talking about the critiques for the ones that are shortlisted?
That's the way I took the question.
Yeah. Yes, I mean we always give some feedback to the entries which are shortlisted, don't we, Leigh? But yes. I think we also did something last year, didn't we? In criminal critiques.
I think, was this for people who did not make it onto the long list? We offered a reduction for a mini critique. Yes. Yeah. So the mini critiques, normally a short critique, mini critique would be of 3,000 words plus synopsis. and that normally costs, I can't remember, around £90, I think, doesn't it? Isn't it?
It's
is
about
that
100, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
something
about
like that.
100. But we offered them at a reduced rate for people who had entered the Debut Dagger competition but had not made it onto the long list. So I can't remember how much it was. Was it about half price or something?
I can't remember either.
Remember, we could look that up. Yeah,
it's not decided by us anyway, so we'd better leave that one. But yeah, hopefully that will be something that we'll do again, because I think it was quite successful last year.
Yeah, and this was
added
people
on, they said, sorry.
Yeah, this was people who entered the competition but did not reach the long list. Yeah.
JV said the critiques for entrance, it was great and very helpful. So that's
nice.
Referring to.
Good.
Yeah, we get very, very good feedback. I've got lots of comments. We could supply lots of testimonials. I tend not to keep them all. We get very, very positive feedback for the critiques that the CWA offer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do not see any more questions, so I think that about wraps things up. But thank you so much again to Leigh and Dee for being here. Thank you to everybody who came to see the announcement. We will have the replay up on the hub page if anyone would like to watch this again. And good luck to everyone. Happy writing, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting.
Anytime. Bye, everyone.
Bye.